Let's address the elephant in the room. I'm the hottest person in the world.
And if you disagree with this sentiment, I don't need your business.
If I'm gonna stand there 18 hours of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed.
The lead actress of the film decided to sit in an empty theater so she can watch her name flash on the screen as she squealed that her film was #1 for 6 days.
It all started with a few blurry screenshots. At first, people weren't even sure they were real. Just another day on the internet filled with wild rumors and half-baked leaks. But this one hit different. Alleged messages from a private group chat began circulating on X, formerly Twitter, showing what appeared to be Rachel Zegler mocking Disney fans. She supposedly referred to them as low IQ, cringe, and obsessed, comparing them to adults who dress as cartoon animals and cry at theme park parades.
Rachel Zegler was a bad decision from day one. She can sing, I'll give her that, but she's got a lot of power, but absolutely no range. Plus, on the flip side, she can't act, and she's a smug big mouth, which even Disney now admits they couldn't control.
And everything I do, people will wait in line to see.
It was vicious, it was unexpected, and it exploded. What really fueled the fire wasn't just the content of the messages, but the alleged sender. These weren't comments from some random background actor or internet troll. This was Snow White herself. The timing couldn't have been worse, as the Snow White remake was already facing backlash over its creative direction. Now, the film's leading lady was being accused of insulting the very fans who supported Disney's magical legacy. And then came the quote that lit a match under the internet. "I'd rather eat glass than smile at another sweaty dad in a dwarf costume asking for an autograph." That line alone was reposted over 100,000 times within a single day, triggering a viral backlash campaign that no PR team could spin away. The group chat leak opened the floodgates. Fans, influencers, and even former Disney employees began speaking out, and they weren't holding back. Hashtags like #NotMySnowWhite and #ReplaceRachel took over social media within hours. Users called Zegler elitist, tone-deaf, and Hollywood's worst casting mistake. But what made this backlash especially potent was that it didn't just come from casual viewers. It came from the core Disney fandom, the exact group that buys the merchandise, visits the theme parks, and keeps the brand alive across generations. These weren't people who just stumbled into Snow White. They were lifelong fans who saw the 1937 classic as a symbol of innocence and hope. To them, Rachel's comments weren't just a bad joke. They were a direct insult. Some even said it felt like being mocked by someone they helped put on a pedestal. Disney's silence didn't help either. With no official statement and Rachel staying quiet, the fans assumed the worst, that the studio was either ignoring the issue or backing her up. It didn't take long for influencers to start breaking down the drama, with YouTubers dissecting every comment and TikTok creators making sarcastic skits. The fanbase wasn't just disappointed, they were furious. And they were organized. When the scandal hit peak virality, most public figures would rush to clean up the mess. A tweet, an apology, maybe even a publicist-approved statement clarifying the intent behind the comments. But Rachel Zegler did none of that. Instead, she went silent. No Instagram stories, no tweets, no interviews. Just nothing. And that silence only made everything worse. In Hollywood, silence during a PR firestorm doesn't read as innocence. It reads as strategy or worse, guilt. Speculation grew fast. Some fans theorized that Zegler's lawyers had advised her to stay quiet, especially if legal fallout was on the table. Others believed she was simply trying to wait out the outrage and let the news cycle move on. But the internet doesn't forget that easily, especially when memes and edits are spreading like wildfire. Her lack of response became its own story. Every hour she didn't speak, the perception deepened. Either she didn't care, or she couldn't deny the leaks without admitting they were real. And in this case, no comment was a comment. People filled in the blanks themselves, and none of it was flattering. As the backlash gained momentum, conspiracy theories began to fly. Some believed the leak wasn't a fluke at all, but a calculated move from inside Disney. The theory went like this. Snow White was already shaping up to be a disaster. Reshoots had been ordered, The budget ballooned, and early test screenings were reportedly lukewarm. So, in order to distance themselves from the incoming flop, the studio may have chosen to leak the group chat and let Zegler take the fall. It sounds wild, until you consider that Disney had a lot to lose. If the movie bombed, someone would have to take the blame. And who better than the outspoken, controversial lead actress who'd already stirred up trouble with her interviews? On the flip side, another theory emerged. Rachel's own team leaked the screenshots, not to hurt her, but to shift blame onto a former assistant. They suggested the messages were doctored, deepfaked, or taken out of context. But tech experts stepped in and analyzed the texts, and most agreed they looked authentic. The chaos only deepened when a verified Disney voice actor chimed in on social media, defending the fans and calling out Zegler's behavior. That tweet went viral, drawing even more attention to the scandal. Disney still hadn't made an official comment, but the court of public opinion had already made its decision. Rachel was guilty, at least in the eyes of the internet. With the controversy in full swing, fans started digging. And what they found made everything worse. Old interviews began circulating where Rachel Zegler spoke about the original Snow White film, and not in a good way. She called Prince Charming a stalker, labeled the love story weird, and said the 1937 film lacked depth. While the intent might have been to frame the remake as a modern retelling, her tone didn't feel respectful. It felt dismissive. And that's where things took a sharp turn. It wasn't just what she said, but how she said it. Viewers picked apart her expressions, eye rolls, smirks, sarcasm, and started creating viral edits on TikTok that layered dramatic music under her interviews to highlight the perceived arrogance. The clips became courtroom exhibits in a social media trial, and Rachel was the defendant. Even people who hadn't seen the movie began to weigh in, joining the pile-on because the tone of her interviews rubbed them the wrong way. Critics argued she wasn't just offering a new perspective, she was tearing down something beloved without offering anything magical in return. By trying to reinvent a classic, she had, in many people's eyes, insulted the legacy of it. The sentiment was clear. If you're going to rewrite the fairy tale, maybe don't burn the storybook first. After weeks of silence and viral backlash, Rachel Zegler finally made a move, but it was the worst possible one. She posted a TikTok skit meant to poke fun at the film's failure and show she wasn't on the joke. In the video, she strutted into a nearly empty movie theater, all smiles, holding Snow White merchandise. She asked the cashier for tickets, and when he flatly responded, "For which movie?" Cue her awkward pause and forced smile. It was supposed to be cheeky and self-aware. Instead, it backfired hard. The video didn't feel lighthearted or relatable. It felt staged and, honestly, desperate. Viewers didn't see someone laughing with the audience. They saw someone laughing at the situation while pretending everything was fine. And when you're the face of a $250 million flop that fans feel personally betrayed by, posting a video that mocks the failure just feels like salt in the wound. The internet lit up instantly. Comment sections flooded with accusations of arrogance, detachment, and self-delusion. TikTok creators stitched the clip with sarcastic reactions, clown music, and captions like POV, "You just ruined a billion-dollar franchise and think it's cute." What could have been a clever PR pivot turned into a viral symbol of how out of touch Rachel seemed. Instead of taking accountability or even just laying low, she tried to turn her downfall into a punchline, and the internet wasn't laughing. If anything, it was proof she still didn't get it. By this point, the drama around Rachel Zegler had already soured public perception. But the Snow White box office numbers? That sealed the deal. With a jaw-dropping $250 million production budget, plus another $150 million spent on marketing, Disney needed this film to hit $1 billion just to break even. What it got instead was a brutal $43 million opening weekend. And then it dropped by 66% the following week. Globally, it barely crawled toward $140 million. This wasn't just a financial flop, it was a pop culture catastrophe. Theaters were empty. Showtimes were canceled. Some cinemas replaced it with older Disney films just to get butts in seats. The reviews were equally harsh. Critics called the film joyless, soulless, and preachy. Fans said it was like watching a lecture, not a fairy tale. The charm, the romance, the magic, it was all gone. And at the center of it all was Rachel Zegler. The very lines she delivered in interviews about Snow White not needing love or a prince ended up defining the film in a way that turned audiences off. Instead of inspiring a new generation, the movie became a symbol of what happens when Hollywood forgets who it's making movies for. And while many elements contributed to the disaster, Rachel's presence and her public persona became the face of it. The numbers don't lie, and this one told a story of epic failure. Just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, they did. The backlash took a sharp political turn, and Rachel Zegler was suddenly in the middle of it all. It started with resurfaced posts where she openly criticized Trump supporters, calling them dangerous and saying she wished they'd never win again. She also posted commentary about the conflict in Palestine, views that clashed publicly with her Snow White co-star Gal Gadot, who is Israeli. That tension spilled over from the internet into real life. Fans began speculating that the two actresses had issues during filming and on the press tour. Awkward interviews, cold body language, and stiff photo ops only fueled the narrative. Meanwhile, public figures started piling on. John Lennon's son, Sean, called Zegler a disconnected brat. Former race car driver Danica Patrick reposted a takedown clip accusing her of corporate feminism and TikTok activism, saying, "Bye-bye." The caption alone said everything. People weren't just criticizing her as an actress. They were turning her into a political lightning rod. She wasn't just the girl who flubbed a movie. She was suddenly a symbol for everything people felt was wrong with modern Hollywood. Rumors swirled that she'd been benched from other upcoming projects, including Toy Story 5 and a planned Pirates reboot. Were they confirmed? Not officially, but the damage had been done. And in this town, rumors stick, especially when your movie just bombed harder than anyone expected. The fallout from Snow White didn't just affect Rachel, it shook the entire Disney empire. Insiders began leaking to outlets like Variety and the Daily Mail, saying executives were in panic mode. Investors wanted answers. Marketing teams were told to scrap anything that could be seen as political or polarizing. Casting decisions were quietly reversed. Scripts were rewritten. The message was clear. The woke remake era had hit a wall, and Snow White was the wrecking ball. Studios had long leaned into reimagining old stories through modern lenses, banking on inclusivity and girl power messaging. And sometimes it worked, but this time it didn't. The criticism wasn't just about politics, it was about tone. Viewers didn't feel enchanted. They felt lectured. And that was the final straw. The sentiment echoed across social media. You can empower characters without killing the magic. People miss the songs. They miss the romance. They miss the heart. In trying to modernize a classic, Disney had unintentionally erased what made it beloved in the first place. And that realization didn't just hit fans. It hit studio executives right in the wallet. Behind the scenes, the whispers got louder. We can't let this happen again. And just like that, one actress's downfall turned into an industry-wide reset. In the end, Snow White wasn't just a movie that failed. It became a Hollywood legend for all the wrong reasons. Rachel Zegler went from rising star to cautionary tale in less than a year. Her confidence, once celebrated as boldness, now reads as unchecked ego. Her interviews, once praised for their candor, are now viewed as PR nightmares. She didn't just fumble a role, she may have inadvertently helped bring down an entire era of studio filmmaking. And the saddest part? It didn't have to be this way. Zegler is talented. She can sing. She has presence. But the image she projected, dismissive, smug, detached, alienated the very people she needed on her side. In trying to rewrite the fairy tale, she forgot the most important part. Fairy tales are supposed to be for everyone. When the audience felt mocked instead of inspired, they turned on her. And when the box office numbers came in, the story was already over. Theaters were empty. Fans were livid. Disney executives were scrambling. And at the center of the storm was the girl who once declared, "Everything I do, people will wait in line to see." Turns out they didn't. They stayed home. And now, Snow White stands as a monument to what happens when Hollywood forgets the magic and chases the message instead. Rachel Zegler's Hollywood reign didn't end with a kiss or a crown. It ended with a meme.